of Mayworks, Winnipeg, and so hopefully some of those people out there watching are on the Facebook page of Mayworks. Sorry that we started a 1 minute late, which on the internet might seem interminable. If it were an actual stage, it would be very normal. Actually, on an actual stage in the physical world, it would be very timely to start a minute late. In fact, that would even be the case, gosh, anywhere in the world, in fact, that I know of, including in the places where they keep close track of time. But being that, well, if this were pre-pandemic times, this concert would actually quite likely be taking place in the actual city of Winnipeg, Manitoba, where the Mayworks organization has events in Winnipeg and many other cities across Canada. And just about 1 year ago, right now, I was in Winnipeg, Manitoba, hanging out with Mitch Podolak and Derek Black and all kinds of folks. I'm quite certain Derek is one of the folks watching right now on the Winnipeg Facebook page, and I can see your comments, by the way. Anybody who's watching on, you feel free to say something. Questions, comments are all welcome, and applause, virtual applause, it's all good. You can throw tomatoes virtually as well, whatever you want. And about a year ago, there was a festival marking the 100th anniversary of the Winnipeg General Strike, which actually is at least as relevant now as it ever was. All the conditions that produced the Winnipeg General Strike are being reproduced right now, at least in the U.S., where, unlike in Canada, we are not receiving monthly checks from the government during the pandemic. But this is a song I wrote for the event of last year, the commemoration of the Winnipeg General Strike, which turned out to be the last event, I believe, that Mitch was involved with organizing before he died a few months later. So I was very glad to have gotten a chance to get up there, hang out with that wonderful man at that wonderful festival, where I sold more CDs than James Keelan, and I'll remind James Keelan of that every opportunity I have. But this is a song about the Winnipeg General Strike. War came, men were drafted, many never made it back. Those who did discover, in their absence they got the sack. Tenements and squalor, both rats and people getting sick. What they had in common, life was short, death was quick. Oh, wait a sec. This, I hate to interrupt a concert, but I just realized, oh good, okay, audio processing is disabled. It doesn't sound horrible, okay. Well, we'll just pretend that didn't happen. I didn't want to sound horrible. This is... If any of you live stream out there using Zoom or StreamYard and you're playing an instrument, always disable audio processing. But don't do it in the middle of the song when you forgot that you already did it, Do it before the show if you want to act like a professional. War came, men were drafted, many never made it back. Those who did discover, in their absence they'd got the sack. Tenements and squalor, both rats and people getting sick. What they had in common, life was short, death was quick. No one had a plan, what they were going to do. When all the men came back home and the ranks of the unemployed grew. The way the people had to live was no life at all, but it still came as a surprise. How many answered the call? If you weren't there, you'll never know just what it was like when the whole city went on strike. City leaders papers and newspapers. In many ways they tried to do everything they could to widen the divide between good Canadians and those they called alien scum, between those who missed conscription and those who beat the war drum. But when the veterans marched in Winnipeg, they marched for everyone. Under the banner of the working class, the one big union. Everybody left their jobs, whether organized or not. Even the policemen walked away, refused to embrace the rot. If you weren't there, you'll never know just what it was like when the whole city went on strike. Deputized the scabs. Soon they shot 2 men who died in the city center on the hour when the scabs rampaged through the city, attacking anyone in the street, trapping people in alleyways, not even allowing them to retreat. Soldiers occupied the city. People hadn't eaten in weeks. The prospects for victory began to look bleak. People went back to their jobs, if indeed they even could. The bosses said they'd seek revenge, and many of them would. If you weren't there, you'll never know just what it was like when the whole city went on strike. Strike leaders were imprisoned, from where several were elected to the Canadian Parliament. And a monument was erected at Main and Portage, where a streetcar was overturned, driven in by strike breakers on the spot where it was burned. It was a century ago, but life is often still defined by which side you were on. On that picket line, was your grandpa shot in the heart, or did they break his leg when the working class rose up and shut down Winnipeg? If you weren't there, you'll never know just what it was like when the whole city went on strike. If you weren't there, you'll never know just what it was like when the whole city went on strike. I suppose everybody out there can hear, otherwise there'd be somebody commenting saying, I can't hear you, which is a handy thing about, you not working with a producer. At least you can have somebody shouting at you on the message board saying, hey, turn the volume up. Well, it's, I can only, doing a concert in Winnipeg without being in Winnipeg it's a interesting and strange concept. It kind of works because, you always end up with people, when you're doing a concert on somebody else's Facebook page, you end up with them watching from that Facebook page. So it's kind of like being in Winnipeg, except I can't see you or hear you, and I'm not there. But, but eventually, if we could start doing these concerts in Animal Crossing and we can all be avatars and stuff, that might be more fun, I think, actually. Except I've never played Animal Crossing. I've only heard about it. Anybody out there play Animal Crossing? Should we do a concert in Animal Crossing? This is a song about what it's like right here in Portland. Every time you go for a walk, there's certain things that you see. Each couch by the street has a story. Some were brand new just last year. Looks like days ago, someone had a door key, and it was in a living room, not here. Getting covered in leaves falling down, getting soaked each time it rains. Did someone split quickly, head out of town? Perhaps whoever left these coffee stains. Each couch by the street has a story. I wonder what this one may be. Another one too dry to have been out for long. It was once someone's property. Did they leave their home and move into a car, or find a sofa to sleep on at a friend's place? Did they stay near or go away far, disappear with hardly a trace? Each couch by the street has a story, one that ended without a yard sale. No one's buying much in the pandemic. Most any such plans are derailed. Along with the crashing economy, all the people who just got the sack. Could just be time for society to have one another's back. Each couch by the street has a story, and those stories will soon multiply. Once the ban on evictions is lifted, once thousands more people have died. While we're here in a country that's failed, when the moratorium is through, when they come to evict your neighbors, what will you do? Each couch by the street has a story. But you know what? There's somebody knocking on the door in the green room. I didn't think that was possible on the internet. Wait a sec. In the virtual green room, how'd they even get in there? And, oh my goodness, who's this? Ah, Attila the stockbroker.
Hello, David. Hello.
Oh, wait a sec. I can't hear you. Now I know why.
Can you hear me now? Yeah.
John.
Yeah, nice to see you.
Great to see you.
And nice to be in Winnipeg, in this kind of virtual kind of way. A place that I remember very well. I've performed at the Winnipeg Comedy Festival, and I've performed at events connected with the Winnipeg Folk Festival. One of which, in between you inviting me to have a little spot in this performance, I remembered that I had actually. It was so amusing that I'd actually recorded it in prose, and it was in my 1993 book, Scornflakes. So I shall be reading this in a minute.
Fantastic.
But before that, I'd just like to say for Winnipeg people, because I've done 6 tours of Canada and I've played in Winnipeg about 3 or 4 times. I hope very much at some point, someday, I'm going to come back. Although, to be honest, flying is not on the top of my agenda right now with dodgy lungs and a general desire not to inflict any more horribleness on the planet. But one of the really, I was talking to David very briefly about this before we started. One of the very few, and there are very few. I mean, both David and I think we're fairly optimistic people. But one of the very few positive things about this is that somebody like me gets to learn the internet, something which I've never. Obviously I have Facebook and I have lots of followers on there, and I write stuff, and I put up videos, and I have, I got Twitter and I got my email. But the idea of actually broadcasting live on the internet, it's like what? Anyway, so I can do it now. I mean, I've got Zoom and everything. Zoom is shit if you play music, as you said. What is it you have to disable?
Yeah, the trick is with Zoom, as well as with this platform we're using now, if you were to try to play an instrument, is to disable audio processing. You go to and this is good for everybody out there. Everybody out there needs to know this. You go to settings, and then you go to the audio camera thing and disable audio processing.
I'm going to write it down so I don't forget. Disable audio processing.
Although if you do have a crying baby in the background, keep the audio processing on. Or if you have...
I know that it regards music as extraneous noise. It likes human speech and regards everything else as extraneous noise, doesn't it?
Exactly. Which is great if you're in the car or,
This is a self-indulgent tech conversation, which, coming from Attila the stockbroker especially, is just not something. Let me do a poem for you. This is about this is what's happened, really. It's coronation. This little rap's here to inspire us not to get coronavirus. Lady Gaga, Miley Cyrus, they don't want coronavirus. It's a disease coming on the breeze, and none of us would like it, please. It's a disease coming on the breeze. Piss off, Trump. It's not Chinese. Bloody hell. It's a pandemic running through the world at a rate systemic. Let me spell out my position. I'm 62 with a lung condition. Let's all work hard to avoid it till researchers have destroyed it. Don't get cranky. Don't be a fogey. Use that hanky. Bin that bogey. This little rap's here to inspire us not to get coronavirus. Lady Gaga, Miley Cyrus, they don't want coronavirus. It's a disease coming on the breeze and none of us could like it, please. It's a disease coming on the breeze. Piss off, Trump. It's not Chinese. Please be kind and give assistance. Always do it at a distance. Get your normal shopping done. There's enough for everyone. Panic buying stupid cable. Put back all that toilet paper. What a crappy shit idea. Local pub delivers beer. This little rap's here to inspire us not to get coronavirus. Lady Gaga, Miley Cyrus, they don't want coronavirus. It's a disease coming on the breeze and none of us would like it, please. It's a disease coming on the breeze. Piss off, Trump. It's not Chinese. You dance called the Pontius Pilate. Time we all learned to freestyle it. Water, hands, and a bar of soap, cleaner than a microscope. No, don't scratch your dirty bridge, then go down and raid the fridge. Please keep safe. Please keep well. Coronavirus, go to hell. Cheers.
More.
Human. So here's some.
I think Winnipeg wants more.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's my on Winnipeg. I wrote this. It would have been. I can't think when I did my first tour of Canada in 1989 and the second one in 1991. It would have been 1991. And I know that I was supposed to be booked for the Winnipeg Folk Festival, but the people that organised it were too scared. But some of the people who were involved with the Winnipeg Folk Festival who wanted to book me anyway, despite the fact the people who ran it were too scared. But this is the chap that you're talking about, David.
That sounds like Mitch. That's exactly how I've gotten gigs.
Mitch. That was it. So Mitch and a couple of his mates put me on at a place called the Norwood Hotel. So the Winnipeg Folk Festival turned me down, but they were going to have me on anyway. So they put me on at the Norwood Hotel, and I remember what happened. So I've written it's in my book.
Excellent.
In this
Good
book,
thing to write books. You remember things that way.
I am playing at a plush antiseptic businessman's dinner and dance establishment called the Norwood Hotel. It's my first gig in Winnipeg, and it seems completely self-evident that no one round here has the faintest idea what Attila the Stockbroker is. The gig has been organised at very short notice by some dissidents from the Winnipeg Folk Festival. As far as I can tell, the publicity consists of a box ad in the hotel restaurant menu and a couple of leaflets shoved between the Grateful Dead albums in the local second-hand record store. There is a $2 admission charge waived for anyone entertaining at or staying in the hotel. The majority of the audience consists of businessmen, corporate males, each with one of those little cardboard identification badges which middle-aged executives wear in lieu of personalities when they go to business functions in hotels. They are all rather drunk and obviously under the impression that Attila the Stockbroker is some kind of country and western act. There's a smattering of folk club regulars, mostly Woodstock survivors and Aaron Sweater victims, and to my pleasure and surprise, a group of 10 or so who look like punks and show every sign of interest. In fact, virtually all of them come up to me individually during the course of the evening and ask me why the hell I'm playing at a corporate country and western golfing club instead of the local anarcho-veggie commune. Will I come and play for them there after I've been booed off? At the appointed hour, I take the stage. Directly in front of me and seemingly oblivious to my presence, 4 gentlemen of the wrist talk corporate gunk. Their lapel badges indicating an umbilical relationship with a local computer firm. Summoning up all my considerable energy reserves, I launch into an extra loud, extra fast version of Libyan Students from Hell and await the onslaught. An hour and a half and 3 encores later, I leave the stage very worried. Cheers. That's what happened.
Yeah,
I'm sure you recognise this kind of experience, David, where you've got enthusiasts that want to put you on and they can't, and other people don't want to do it. So they put you on somewhere inappropriate, but you fucking storm it and you do it. And that was what happened there. Because actually, to be fair, there's probably 100 people there, and half of them were Attila fans, and the other half were a computer conference, and I actually really enjoyed it. So great.
Yeah, right. Exactly. As once they stop talking quite so much, then you realize, they're actually enjoying it.
No, I mean, with me, I mean, the difference between us is people can actually talk through one of your performances quite easily, right? With me, because what I do, I'm a spoken word performer, and I'm very loud and totally without fear. I just say, for fuck's sake, if you want to talk, piss off somewhere else and let the people who want to listen. That's what I do, and they do. I mean, never once has anyone not done what I've asked. Normally they just shut up anyway, because because I'm shouting so loudly that they first of all they hear that I'm shouting really loudly and it's actually quite difficult to talk over, and then they actually listen. Unless they're completely devoid of brain cells, they think actually this is quite interesting.
Exactly. Huh?
So, there you go. Anyway, I'm going to leave you to your gig. I don't want to interrupt too much, unless you want me to do some more. I mean,
Oh gosh, that was. Can we have one more, and then I'll get back to playing music for the Winnipeg folks.
absolutely. I mean, no, so from I don't know who's listening in Winnipeg, but I somehow I hope I'll be back there one day. Last time I was there was, as I say, it was Al Ray. Al Ray is, if anyone knows Al Ray from the Winnipeg Comedy Festival, say thank you for Till the Stockbroker for my last visit, which I came with my wife, in about 2004. So I'll do this one. The last one I do. What should I do? I do something very serious, because it's kind of a time when people need to really think about what life is about. And one of the things life is about is not bearing grudges and not dying or whatever with regret that you haven't kept the relationships going or rebuilt the bridges with people that you actually care about. And I'm going to do this poem for you, which is a poem that I wrote for my stepfather just before he died. And it's a completely true story, and it's called Never Too Late. My father died when I was 10. And when she dried her tears, Mum met you in the choir. She'd known of you for years. I was so pleased when she told me that she would be your wife. And I looked forward happily to a new man in my life. But you were the classical singer who thought rock and roll was junk. And I was the Bolan boogie boy who soon became a punk. You were the civil servant for whom everything had its place. And I was the left-wing activist out there and in your face. Yes, you were the head of the household. And I was the stroppy kid. We wound each other up for sure. We flipped each other's lid. But later, we both learned so much and something new began. And here's a poem I wrote for you, you decent, gentle man. So I went off to my own life, left you and Mum to yours. A few words about football, then the sound of closing doors. But the passing of so many years gave us both time to reflect. And slowly, oh so slowly, we forged a new respect. When you were ill the first time and found it hard to walk, I'd take you to the hospital and we would sit and talk. It felt so right and normal. And it was such a shame that it had taken all this time. Both stubborn, both to blame. Because you were the head of the household and I was the stroppy kid. We wound each other up for sure. We flipped each other's lid. But later, we both learned so much and something new began. And here's a poem I wrote for you, you decent, gentle man. When Mum came down with Alzheimer's, 5 years you cooked and cared, and we were around there every day, so many thoughts were shared. Your simple, honest loyalty. The vows you've made, you'd keep. No longer the big boss man, me, no longer the black sheep. Then came that day in hospital. The end was near, we knew. You told me, I do love you, John. I said, I love you too. You took my hand and squeezed it. Our eyes were filled with tears. The first time that we'd said that, it took 37 years. Because you were the head of the household and I was the stroppy kid. We wound each other up for sure. We flipped each other's lid. But later, we both learned so much and something new began. And here's a poem I wrote for you, you decent, gentle man. It's never too late. Never too late. Never too late to say you love someone. If it wasn't too late for me and John, then it's never too late for anyone. Cheers, David. Cheers, Winnipeg.
Oh, John, so beautiful. Thank you so much for dropping by, John.
Well, I shall listen to the rest of your sets with happiness, with my sitting here with my beer here in Southwick, West Sussex, and speak to you soon, mate. All the very best.
Speak to you soon.
Cheers. Cheers.
That was Attila the stockbroker, who just happened to be somewhere in the area. And so I thought that he should just pop on by in this concert, since that's what we do in real life. I mean, this is real life, right? We're just on a computer, so why change things now? Except that nobody applauds and nobody, other than that, we need to do something about that aspect. I think We all need to get Nintendo games. No, we don't. We need to go back outside soon. Once we could all just get like those astronaut suits, maybe. Time I leave the apartment, things change a little more. The rug pulled out so many times, who knows where's the floor. Folks look more ragged by the day, I can give them a few bucks. Wonder what the future holds, wish them luck as I walk on by. See the people on their porches, chairs out on a deck. Sometimes you can tell which ones received their checks, which ones are still waiting after all these many weeks, wondering if this is what it smells like up Schitt's Creek as I walk on by. When my children ask me, I'm not quite sure what to say. Why the playground's always empty, where the kids all used to play. Why the people cross the street now whenever we come near. Where did all the people go who used to be here as I walk on by? I go out with my headphones on like everybody else does, listening for news suddenly relevant, because we all want to know how the virus might transform all of us still here, weathering this storm as I walk on by. As I walk on by. As I walk on by. Back in 1918, after the survivors from the First World War went back home to wherever their homes were, they took ships all around the world back to places like Winnipeg and Sydney and London. And those that survived the war, who also survived the pandemic, were the ones who went home. And but many of the ones that went home actually were barely surviving, and many of them were dying in the process of going home, on the trains and in the hospitals of France, and on the boats back to North America and Australia and England and elsewhere. And it was those dying people on ships that under normal circumstances would have been staying home and dying at home. But they were dying in public, surrounded by other people, being moved around. And thus it was the perfect circumstances to spread the deadliest strain of the virus, which killed many more people than the First World War did, although that was the deadliest war up till then in history. World War was raging like the earth had never seen. A whole generation lined up in trenches with killing machines. But aside from a few islands and some mountain peaks, the pandemic killed more people in just 24 weeks. No one knew where it began. Speculation's gone on for years. The trenches of Europe is where the deadly strain appears. From packed trains and hospitals around the globe it spread, this war strain of the virus that left so many dead. The death toll was unequal, but barely anywhere was left untouched, though the greatest share of dying was reserved for the poorest colonies of the empires and their wars that created this disease. If you have a couple hours, then do something with me. Conduct a little research into your family tree. If you look into it, it won't take long. Quite likely we'll find in 1918 you left an ancestor behind. Pandemic knew no borders. It went from the front lines, which had increased its deadliness as if by design. It circled the whole planet, so many people died. They dug mass graves everywhere, put your relatives inside. World War was raging like the earth had never seen. A whole generation lined up in trenches with killing machines. But aside from a few islands and some mountain peaks, the pandemic killed more people in just 24 weeks. I know that although it sounds like things from what I hear from the Canadians, things are going much better there than they are here, although that's true of most of the world. There's still a lot of the same problems with lack of enough equipment to keep people safe, and also with essential / expendable workers dying. And it was actually I heard first about this situation, as it was becoming evident, I guess, at least in some circles, that this was happening, and it was from a bus driver in Alberta. See, this is a Mayworks Winnipeg concert here, so if you're hearing more Canadian references than you might otherwise, and I mention Canada quite frequently and write a lot of songs about Canada, but now it's Canada is on my brain, especially when I'm doing a concert in Canada. Although it's virtually, it's also wherever you are, but. This kind of talk will seem so quaint after, a few years. People will be like, look, they were so obsessed with where they were and who they were playing for and, geography. Who cares about geography? But it is, if you're into international solidarity, the internet is a lot of fun because you can hang out with your friends from everywhere at the same time and don't need to worry about geography. But anyway, back to the point of people dying. I heard from a bus driver in Alberta about this, what had just happened to a bus driver in Detroit, and I wrote this song. But it could be about many, many different bus drivers and many others. And it goes out to all those farm workers in Yakima, Washington, who are currently on strike, asking the question: are their lives worth less than their apples that they pick? health system's collapsing. You can watch it all unfolding on the screen. If you're afraid to go outside, enough groceries to hide, it may have been weeks since you have seen someone you can touch, and you miss it so much as you wonder what might happen next. Like when your savings run out and the choice is all about what kind of help you might be able to expect. Or perhaps when COVID arrived, while some struggled to survive, you were what they call essential. It didn't take long to see you got that wrong. The word they really meant was expendable. It didn't take long to see there was no emergency. Plans in place for something which all the scientists knew was just a matter of when there'd be a pandemic again. And the kleptocrats in power didn't have a clue. Otherwise, why did Jason Hargrove die? Because he kept keeping on, waking before dawn to do his part for society. Jason drove his bus, he didn't even make a fuss at the time of the impropriety. Somebody coughed, the virus was off. Not 2 weeks later, Jason would be dead. What if he had protective gear, with sick passengers so near, with no barrier to protect his head? Why did Jason Hargrove die? Stay home, flatten the curve, they say, unless we need you to serve food for us or care for all the ill. In that case, we'll call you a hero, just like the workers at Ground Zero, where one by one the cemetery filled. Now in every bus and truck, the drivers try their luck, essentially told, thank you for your service. If there were the front lines, no one put up any signs. Did anybody sign up for this? Why did Jason Hargrove die? Once the death rate peaks, in days or months or weeks, with each one of the virus's waves. Once we can take stock and recover from the shock of the sight of all of the mass graves. Will this be the impetus, this driver on a bus, along with so many, many more? The nurses and the prisoners, seafarers and farm workers, what will they all die for? Why did Jason Hargrove die? Why did Jason Hargrove die? And that's the most difficult thing about doing shows on the internet when you don't make set lists in advance is you cannot rely on standing there for at least 10 seconds while the audience is clapping to give you 10 seconds to think about what you're going to do next. Even if you were just thinking about what you're going to do next while you're singing the last song, you don't have those 10 seconds. It's like the song's over and then you're on the spot again. So I mean, it's not like we should do more song swaps on the internet. I think that's going to be the future. Song swaps between 2 or 3 performers. I think that'll be my next concert on the internet. That was too much fun with having John pop in there. We'll do that. We'll do more of that. But this is a concert for Winnipeg Mayworks and anybody else who happens to be listening. And if you do happen to be listening, it's probably because this is also being broadcast on various other platforms, such as Cable Community Radio's Facebook page and the Facebook page of Popular Resistance and my YouTube channel and other random spots. Could be broadcasting on your organization's Facebook page if you want. Just hit me up and we can do that. This is a collaborative something or other. And let's see. I take requests, especially if you're from Winnipeg. I will even more enthusiastically take your request. But I don't know if here in the United States there are rent strikes going on all over the place, and people are organizing either just through the spreading of ideas or through actual sort of making lists of neighbors who are participating and all sorts of things like that. And I've been writing a lot on these subjects, but this is a song. I'll do a song I wrote years ago on the subject of rent striking because I've been into the idea of overthrowing feudalism for a very long time now. I think it would be high time to have a society that's not based on the landlord-tenant relationship. I'm curious what's going to happen with everybody in Canada getting $2,000 a month from the government for the duration of the crisis, which is a very good thing. But I'm curious if the rents are going to go up because for a lot of people that might be more income than they're used to having for a lot of the poorer members of society, which will mean probably that the lowest cost housing will start rising in price if it's owned by private landlords. Like, say, the cost of renting a trailer for a month. I'll bet that's going to go up during the pandemic in a lot of places because people can now afford to pay more than whatever they were paying before because the cost of renting a trailer, as many people know, at least in the U.S., is often pegged to whatever the amount that people can normally get for welfare, which is not much, but then, they charge just about that much, so people can spend 100% of their income on rent, and then food stamps will feed themselves, and so it's sort of a subsistence existence. You can read about more if you read a book called Evicted, if you want to read about that. Evicted. White Trash is also a really good book. They're not allowed to raise rent right now? Oh, fantastic. Is that across Canada? They're not allowed to raise rent? Good. So you can have income and they can't raise the rent. So people actually might get through this. That's good. If your rent is doubled, there are different ways to cope with the situation and make it through your days. There are therapeutic methods, such as playing darts with a picture of your landlord's private body parts. You can get a roommate, or 2 or 3 or 4. Build a loft and squeeze more beds onto every floor. You can scratch up each Mercedes that you find on your street. Say, fuck off, yuppie scum, to each yuppie scum you meet. But do not kill your landlord. It will not end well. You'll be living rent-free inside a prison cell. You can pay a visit very early in the morn to where your landlord lives, but don't forget the bullhorn. You can form a samba band, march up and down his road. You can play with firecrackers as you watch them explode. You can sing a song about 1848 when renters burned the mansions down and overthrew the state. You can talk about your landlord, how about you'd like to see him dead. Just make sure it remains only something that you said. Yes, do not kill your landlord. It will not end well. You'll be living rent-free inside a prison cell. You can say hi to your neighbors, organize a meeting, form a tenants union so it won't be something fleeting. Have some demonstrations, make plans for a rent strike, create a list of demands, perhaps something like no more rent increases, fix the things that break, get rid of all that mold in the walls, for goodness sake. No more no-cause evictions, no more acting like an ass, no more acting like a member of a feudal ruling class. But do not kill your landlord, it will not end well. You'll be living rent-free inside a prison cell. I'll do a poem. I wrote a poem for my landlord too. I mean, more recently I've been, I haven't paid the rent. Actually, we haven't paid the rent since they suspended evictions in Portland, which goes until the end of June. My landlord has been, increasing the rent so much, and my landlord is such an evil corporation that owns so many buildings, and basically. The only reason that people pay rent to landlords like that, as most people are already aware, if they are class-conscious individuals, is because of the threat of eviction by the armed enforcers of the law. This is what keeps us in check generally. But then they suspend evictions sometimes because they're afraid of the consequences if there's mass evictions, as they should be. I wish they were more afraid. But so now then this is the time to push that envelope, take advantage of that moment if you're in a situation like that, which sounds like is not at all the case in Canada, but which is good. But again, we need this example here in the U.S. It's very handy that, I know that Michael Moore pisses off Canadians by saying too many nice things about Canada all the time, and there are problems in Canada, of course. But we here in the U.S., we need Canada because we need an example of how things can be done better, at least in many regards. Let's just not mention the tar sands, but otherwise, many things are done better there. And, for example, the money that Canadians get during the pandemic, and the fact that you have a national health service and, other things like that. But this is a poem. Instead of paying the rent for June, I'm sending my landlord a poem, which I think is easily worth, $1,200, which $1,250, 12. That's what it's supposed to go up to in July. Now it's $1,175 still, and they want to raise it to $1,250 in July, which they announced in March that they were going to do that, which was way already into the pandemic. Anyway, so I wrote them a poem. So since it's actually a poem, it is a piece of art, I'll treat it as such and include it in this concert. I wrote a letter to the Randall Group to enumerate their crimes. This time, I made sure the letter rhymes. It'll soon be the 1st of the month, so we thought we'd write you a letter. Not that you ask, but all of us struck by the virus are starting to feel better. We thought we should let you know once again why the time we've spent has still not included writing any checks for the rent. I doubt you're even reading this, I'm not going to lie. But just in case you are, here are some of the reasons why we'd rather keep our money instead of giving it away to your rich investors, come whatever may. Because you don't need the money. In fact, you guys are such toffs, you have to donate millions just to get a tax write-off. In your magnanimity, all the millions to charity, you stole from all your renters. What fucking barbarity. Because, in case you didn't realize, your renters have been moving out. Every time you raise the rent, let there be no doubt. You're making people homeless, forcing kids to live in cars, while you and your investors go to galleries and wine bars. Because you brag of your philanthropy while your tenants drown in debt. Because I'm not exactly sure how much more fucked up things can get. Because you actually raised the rent in the midst of a pandemic. Because over the years you've made sure the problem is systemic. Because you and your corporate lobbyists with Multifamily Northwest have lobbied all the legislatures to make sure conditions are the best for you to underpay your workers, while with each passing year, you've made it ever more impossible for them to even live near here. Because there's asbestos in the ceilings and mold upon the walls. Because this carpet is fucking ancient, and that's definitely not all. Because you own hundreds of buildings up and down the coast. Because corporations like yours are getting bailed out the most. Because you keep reminding us of the money you say we owe in the middle of a new Great Depression as bad as 90 years ago. Because the government is paralyzed. No one's answering their phones. They say they'll send us assistance, but there's just a dial tone. Because the suspension on evictions goes till the end of June, and there are a lot of our fellow renters singing the same tune, because you, Randall Group, are slumlords, and at the end of the day, something has to give. Things can't go on this way. So I'll just say, in conclusion, this is a lovely spot for a post-eviction future when it becomes our squat. But until that happens, we can be reasonable. In fact, we'll consider paying half the rent if you send us a new rental contract. That's my latest poem for the landlord. But in one of the things that's been happening globally, which is surely of being noticed by many, including in Canada and also in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere, where some of the folks, for example, on the Popular Resistance Facebook page and, Popular Resistance generally, have been occupying the Venezuelan consulate with the invitation of the Venezuelan government, which is run by Maduro, not by Guaido, regardless of what the propaganda here might say. The actual government has nothing to do with that man. It is headed by the Bolivarian revolutionary government, which came to power democratically when Chavez was overwhelmingly elected on many, many occasions, as has been Maduro. And now, of course, the sort of I don't know what to call it, warm war, somewhere between cold and hot war against Venezuela continues in the form of sanctions preventing Venezuela from importing needed medical supplies to deal with the pandemic, replacement parts for their oil refineries. The U.S. and U.K. and other countries are making sure that Venezuela is as much of a mess as they can possibly make it, and yet it's still the government is still popular. Because people realize what's going on, that it's not that it is the fault of these foreign governments and banks that are primarily the problem, and that is ever more unconscionable right now during the pandemic, and as U.S. Warships are out there. And who knows what's going to happen with the Venezuelan military accompanying the Iranian tankers that are heading there right now. But this goes out to Venezuela from here in North America. Chavez. Chavez was elected like every time he ran. When his socialists took power, that's when the changes began. The opposition started attacking every forward move, but reforms went ahead, the people's welfare improved. A land of such riches that had always gone to so few was reaching places ignored since 1492 in Venezuela. Billions poured into the streets to stop the coup back then. They got the man that they elected back into power again. The Bolivarian Revolution became famous worldwide. Soon other socialist governments swept in a red tide. Between the Cuban doctors and the Venezuelan oil, billions got medical care, millions tilled the soil of Venezuela. Bush began the sanctions, Obama imposed more, a slow-burning, destabilizing economic war. Following the formula of the Chicago Boys team, used in many places to make economies scream. Oil prices plummeted, foreign holdings locked, invasions being planned, negotiations blocked in Venezuela. From the Haitian Revolution to Venezuela today, from the Seminoles to Salvador Allende. Look at their ankles, you'll see the chains, imperial vampires, open veins, those who stand up to the business elite, who cannot stand to see the workers in the driver's seat in Venezuela. In Venezuela. There's I'll conclude this little show for Winnipeg Mayworks with a song that is related to Winnipeg. I just need to remember the title of the song. That's is it called Winnipeg, or what did I call it? It's easier to remember songs than titles of songs sometimes. Oh no, that's not the right one. Oh yeah, it's close. It's somewhere in that alphabet. Actually, I still haven't read the book, but there's what's the most the best-selling author in the Spanish language, Isabel Allende. I just remember that from her introduction. But Isabel Allende's latest book, here it is about this uh, this what happened in 1939. And I mean, we often associate the Chilean poet Pablo Neruda with later times, like the 60s. And of course, he was very, very popular poet. Actually, when Pablo Neruda came back from being the ambassador to France at some point in the 60s, and when he came back to Chile, and he recited poetry for a stadium with 90,000 people in it, just to give people some idea of how popular Pablo Neruda was as a poet, for very good reason. But Pablo Neruda was also, in addition to being a poet, he was, an activist and a diplomat. When he, in 1939, he was working at as a young man, working at the French embassy, I believe it was, for what was then the democratic government of Chile. It wasn't run by a socialist, but it was certainly not run by Pinochet either. It was a functioning democracy of some kind, and basically was looking to take in Spanish refugees who were in refugee camps in France, being treated terribly by the French authorities in deplorable conditions. They were suspect because they were left-wingers. And they made it to Chile just in time before they would have been shipped off to Germany by the new occupying power in France at the time, which was Germany, having just invaded. And but they got on a ship, and the ship was called the Winnipeg. And there's reasons for that, but I'll just sing the song. Across the ocean wide, where many ships have been, where many long remember those passengers within. All of those whose families were buried or in jail in the killing fields of Spain when the Winnipeg set sail. Across the ocean wide, across the open seas, a world better than the camps, the French authorities threw the people in, and if they lived to tell the tale, they'd be the lucky few when the Winnipeg set sail. Across the ocean wide, across the open seas, a world better than the camps, the French authorities threw the people in, and if they lived to tell the tale, they'd be the lucky few when the Winnipeg set sail. Across the ocean wide, the ship was met at bay by the throngs of people who just had to come out that day in 1939 to cry and cheer and say all hail solidarity when the Winnipeg set sail. Across the ocean wide was where they had to flee, the thousands upon thousands of Spanish refugees from the lands of Europe where humanity had failed to the shores of Valparaiso when the Winnipeg set sail. Across the ocean wide was where they would remain as dictatorship would rule for half a century in Spain. Torpedoed in 42, now it lies upon the shale. One voyage will outlive her when the Winnipeg set sail. Across the ocean wide. Well, thanks so much, everybody out there in Winnipeg and anywhere else in the world, wherever you might have joined for this little Winnipeg Mayworks Facebook page concert. And if you are up for joining me on the open mic. I'll be doing another open mic Monday, and every Monday, Pandemic Open Mic Mondays, which are broadcast on the Facebook page of Popular Resistance, Cable Community Radio, and my various Facebook and YouTube and other Twitch and Twitter platforms. Uh, you can sign up at davidrovix.com/POMM, Pandemic Open Mic Mondays. And thanks for listening. And if you want to catch any of these other broadcasts, interviews, concerts, etc., you'll find them at davidrovix.com and elsewhere. And see you on Monday for the open mic if you're around. And otherwise, I'll see you somewhere on the internet or in the world someday again. Stay safe, stay strong, talk to your friends, don't pay the rent. Well, unless you live in Canada and you're getting $2,000 a month from the government, in which case the rent strike probably isn't going to happen until that stops. But it shouldn't stop. That's good. That's good. That's good. We need that here. But until that happens, let's not pay the rent. Bye bye.